sources with automatic provision. We have the first guided demonstration by using the Azure Security Center. For this guided demonstration, I will use one of my accounts on it when I have an active subscription. Uh, Here, we can start to perform a search from the Azure Defender service, for example. We can start, well, Microsoft Defender, not Azure Defender, sorry. We can start searching for Microsoft Defender for cloud. If you are starting to search to Azure Security Center, it happens to me, for example, a couple of months ago, I didn't find it the Security Center anymore because, well, the service was recently renamed to Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Now, I can see how many subscriptions I have associated with this, the number of assessed resources, and the number of active recommendations, and the number of security alerts detected on from suspicious events. I can click on all of this information to display, for example, some information and details about a severity for the alert, an alert title, successful brute force attack, for example, and the affected resource, a resource with the name of VM2, virtual machine 2, for example, the activity starting time. For example, the last December the 8th at 11:42 p.m. with this time zone reference, my time zone actually, the UTC -7, for example. If this attack is aligned with one of the MITRE attack framework tactics from a cyber kill chain, for some of them, for example, phishing, potential SQL brute force, attempted logon, that we can see a couple of tactics on it, collection stage and pre-attack stage, for example, the status for the alert is active, other resources involved, a sample app, sample database, for example, sample storage, sample VM, sample app, sample connected cluster, and so on. We can keep on scrolling down. The default view of this table is sorted by the severity. Of course, that we should pay attention to a high automatically classified alert that is highest potential impacting severity for this one. So we should pay attention for all those on it. We can click on any single alert to display some information about or more deeper information on it. By clicking, for example, on view the full details, or just taking an action by reacting manually, or maybe we can just configure some level of automation by under this condition, under this alert details on it, when it's happening again, we can create a playbook for workflow automation. And if we understand how to mitigate this risk with a series of steps to follow, we can create a logic app that uses the multi-step process for reacting on a trigger and specify one or multiple actions to react. And then we can just take the action manually or waiting for notifications. That is a confirmation that the automation workflow triggers basically when this condition happens again, for example. Or we can click on view the full details to get a full view of the related entities on it. A host number 1, detected by Microsoft, accounts used to successfully sign into the host, local administrator, ratio of failure versus successful attempts, activity starting time, activity end time, attacker source IP address detected, number of successful authentication attempts to the host, and the option for taking the action. Some recommendations: mitigating the threat, prevent future attacks, trigger an automated response if I have a logic app already, and suppress similar alerts, for example. Now, from this account, I can see some alerts, but well, recently my subscription expired for that. Let me use a different browser to sign in to another active subscription that I can see, and I wanted to show you the security score and the behavior for the security score, how it's automatically generated, and how we can go deeply for the security score for checking in my actual score, filtering, for example, by subscription by accessing to the Defender for Cloud, and then clicking, for example, into the secure score under the cloud security section, waiting for the dashboard to display and refresh the most recently generated information and data. And we can click on the section of the security score to go for a deep details. We can start filtering by subscription. For example, I'm receiving an 11% only. That is too low. Then I wanted to check why am I receiving this security score. Basically, it is detecting that I have a total of 32 resources here with one subscription, with one active subscription on, and I have 10 unhealthy resources. So the numbers are not so important because, well, we can have just a couple of resources, but we have conditions with a high impact on it. So that high impact is not giving me like a high percentage to increase my security posture. For example, I could have maybe, I don't know, 20 or 50 or 100 resources, but maybe with a low score impact on it. So number is not so important. Basically, the severity detected is the important thing into the security score on it. We can click to starting filtering by the subscription, and we can check in more details about recommendations or controls on this one because, well, sorted by the potential highest score to increase, I can see the first recommendation that it says you should enable MFA. Okay, but MFA to whom? Okay, so we can click on the first option for looking at the details for the recommendation on. The MFA for multi-factor authentication should be enabled on accounts with the owner permissions on subscription. An account with an owner permission is from the Azure subscription context on. An owner can perform everything at the level of the resource management. For example, an owner for the subscription is like a super user for that subscription and all of its structure down. That includes resource groups and includes into resource group all of the resources that we can create basically. So an owner will have permission to perform any change, including creating, deleting, editing existing Azure resources, and up to delegating access to other users at the resource level, for example. So being the owner or users with the owner permissions is like having a highest impact account with that access basically. So if we are just trusting into a user principal name and a password for that user, we are running into a potential security risk on. And there is a policy checking that option on. And that policy is looking through my Azure Active Directory and checking in for all of the users on my directory and checking in the level of permissions at the role-based access control level. If there is a match finding like, okay, there is, give me all of the owner users from here from this policy. Okay, this is the list of the owners. Okay, now check for all these owner users which of those users has the MFA or which ones doesn't have the MFA already turned on. So the result for that policy evaluation will get to an output, and then if there's one or multiple accounts on it, then I can see, okay, you have this non-compliant object, let's say, from your directory. You should turn on the multi-factor authentication for all these owner users. This is an example of how the policy definition is associated and a query that is running on a frequency that is checking in that condition, for example. Defender for Cloud is using multiple components. It is not just like a standalone service that is including all of the it's including all of the services to work as expected to generate that information. Basically, the Defender for Cloud will require a log analytic workspace, which is a deep infrastructure monitoring solution, and it's an Azure resource that if we are turning on the Defender for Cloud plan with all of the features, a default log analytic workspace with the ASC name default will be created. The ASC stands for the Azure Security Center, the former name of the Defender for Cloud option. So if you're looking at that workspace from your list of your resources that says ASC default, it is because you just turn on the license, the full license for the Defender for Cloud. And into that workspace, you're basically collecting data for the assets or cloud resources that the Defender for Cloud, it is starting to collecting logs and is running queries against those logs to find something suspicious or some vulnerabilities into your resources on it. Now, here we can see the integration. Opening a query, for example, that the Resource Graph Explorer will run a query for trying to detect all of the resources that are not in compliance with this owner account from the Azure AD that doesn't have the MFA, for example, on it. So here we will find the simple or complex query that is looking for those assessments and to display that information and to trigger the recommendation on. And here, by clicking on view the policy definition, associated with this recommendation, there is one policy there, checking in with a frequency or level of compliance on it. I can click on view for the policy here, and this is the JSON format, the JavaScript object notation file that represents the configuration of the policy here. The policy says that the MFA should be enabled on accounts with owner permissions under subscription on. Built-in description is that the MFA should be enabled for all subscription accounts with the owner permissions to prevent a breach of accounts or resources on. We can see it here, the category for Security Center, description, enable or disable the execution of the policy. The default value for the policy action is audit if no exists, so only reporting, and so on. So we can see here, well, the policy should be assigned. It's part of a initiative, for example, and then